Hey everyone listening, trying to find direction and move with intention. Welcome to Moving with Intention, a podcast by Black Sheep Coaching. We hope the episode you're about to listen to is empowering, insightful, and helpful. We hope you're moving with intention in your life and taking actions, as small as they may be, towards becoming the person you want to be and living the life you want to live. Disclaimer: this podcast may contain discussion of sensitive topics that may trigger some individuals. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health professionals or resources, and we encourage you to seek those out should you need them. Hey everyone, welcome to Moving with Intention, where today we'll be discussing my personal experience with therapy. The reason for this episode is to help shed light and share experience and discuss some of the benefits in my own life of pursuing therapy as an avenue for change. In our previous episode, we discussed the Psychology Today article in the February 2023 edition entitled Why Therapy Works. If you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend going to listen to it because it discusses this notion of psychological flexibility. And psychological flexibility being one of the key success factors in therapy and one of the key success factors for change. So highly recommend you go in and listen to that if you haven't. But I wanted to record this episode to share my personal experience, to try to break some of the stigma, some of the walls surrounding therapy. I know in modern day society and in Western society, at least from my vantage point, and I'm not saying this is indicative of everybody's experience, but it has been my experience that the notion of masculinity, or whether you call it toxic masculinity, harmful masculinity, or just the concept of masculinity, really had me feeling like therapy was not an option. Seeking therapy was not an option. Admitting I needed help was a sign of weakness. Admitting I needed help was failure. And these ideas, I think, are alive in our society. I think they are a reflection of our upbringing, of our culture. I think they are ideas that stem from our environments and how we were brought up and the environments we were brought up in. So I wanted to share my experience to perhaps enlighten or give somebody a little look behind the scenes and discuss what therapy was like for me so that maybe it doesn't seem such a defeating or scary thought. I think admitting help for me was a big step because as somebody who has been, over the course of his life, very independent, fiercely independent, as my therapist once said, admitting I needed help from somebody else was, in my personal opinion, an admission of some sort of failure. And I'm not sure where that idea stems from, but over the course of my life, I have been able to make my way and find my way. I was working from a young age and I was able to put myself through school and secure good employment, and it's been a tough road. So to get to a point where my mental health was waning and I felt I needed some sort of intervention or some sort of assistance, it was difficult to get to that point. It really took this rock bottom moment to realize that my way of thinking and my way of reacting and my behaviors weren't serving me the same way they once did. I think some of my personality and some of my behaviors in the past served me very well. This notion of fierce independence and getting what I needed to get done and striving for perfection and people pleasing. At one point in my life, these things were useful to me. They were survival tactics. They were very carefully chosen behaviors based on my environments. So, my mindset when it came to therapy, I had that stigma, I had that fear. I didn't know what to expect. There was particular costs involved with therapy. It's definitely not a cheap avenue to pursue unless you have insurance through work or you're covered in other ways. So given all of that, it's an avenue I never chose to pursue. When I got to some of the lowest points in my life, I decided I needed to reach out to somebody. I talked to a friend and they recommended a therapist, one they had worked with previously. And I decided to go in and just do a consultation and just see what that would be like, or just reach out and this person relaying to me that's been helpful for them. I decided to take the plunge. Now I want to be clear, I understand that therapy may not work for everybody. I understand that therapy is not a cure all. But going into therapy, I went in with a particular mindset. And that mindset was, I need help. I need someone to help me understand what I'm feeling. I need some sort of guidance and direction. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to be brutally honest. That was my goal in therapy. I said, I'm not going to hold back, because if I lie to my therapist, or if I were to hold back, or if I were to approach it very cautiously, I feel I wouldn't come to the realizations I have. I feel I wouldn't get the value I needed to. I feel that it would not work. So I reached out. We set up an initial meeting, and this was all done virtually. And thankfully, through various work programs and insurance, psychotherapists were covered and psychology was covered. So I'd highly encourage you, if you're at that point where you're looking to take that step, have a look through your health and benefits plan at work if you have that, or have a look through various organizations or social organizations, or just various avenues for helping you financially in that regard if needed. But with therapy being covered by work, I said, what do I have to lose? It's an hour of my time. I can go in and see what it's like, and I went in with an open mind. And I went in with that notion that I'm just going to be brutally honest and lay it out all on the table and just do my best to be honest about things. And the first session absolutely changed my life in a way that I didn't expect. I think the biggest part of it was receiving validation, understanding that I wasn't crazy, understanding that I wasn't this, you know, I guess understanding I wasn't this bad person I had made myself out to be. And hearing things like I'm too hard on myself, or hearing things like, after this back and forth, I think there was something said where, like, I don't understand how you're still here. And I think that was really validating for me, because it really acknowledged the amount of pain, the amount of loneliness, the amount of struggle that I had faced over my past years. And I'm thankful for all that, because I think, that pain and that struggle and all of those things have brought me to where I am. But I know that in some cases, some of those struggles can be a lot for people. It was a lot for me. Receiving that validation and the amount of empathy and compassion from an absolute stranger was something that really impacted me. There was, I'll be candid, there was a lot of crying that day. And there was a lot of catharsis in that. There was a lot of the validation and the crying and the aftermath of that. The catharsis of it was amazing. And over the course of, I don't even know how long now, it's probably been over a year now, maybe two. I've done a lot of self-discovery in these sessions. There's been a lot of examination of the past. There's been a lot of self-discovery. There's been a lot of questions raised. And in moments I'll come to those sessions with something I want to discuss, particular things I need help with. There were moments where we would meet a few times a month, and there were moments where we wouldn't meet for months. And it really depended on whether or not I needed that additional support. And I do feel in my personal life that my therapist has become part of my support system. I have friends, I have other people that I've been a little more open with and could talk to. But I would definitely include my therapist as part of my support system. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Because I think in today's society, in today's day and age, there are people who lack empathy. There are people who do not know how to be emotionally supportive. And some of those people could be our parents, our siblings, our friends, our teachers, etc. So I think having a strong support system is extremely important to mental health personally. And that's just been my experience at least. Therapy was a way for me to unpack various feelings, to sit there and examine myself, to be introspective and reflective. And I discovered a lot about myself. I discovered why I behave certain ways. I discovered why I react certain ways. I discussed various fears, various struggles, discussed anxiety and stress, depression, sadness, loneliness. There was a lot of discussion around these very, what I think are almost taboo topics in our society. Even now, recording this, I'm thinking, am I saying too much? I'm not sure because I think these topics are extremely sensitive. They're extremely difficult. They're extremely personal. And I think in today's society, speaking openly about that is not widely accepted. And I understand why. I understand the nature of it. I understand how personal it can be. I understand the notion of trauma and the concepts of like trauma dumping. But I really think these discussions need to be had. They need to be had between people we trust. They need to be had with people who are in positions of uh, expertise and professional, like coming at it from a professional vantage point, like a therapist. I think being able to discuss how we feel, what we think, and being able to examine ourselves, I think that's beyond a personal battle. I think limiting the scope of that to strictly self help, in my personal opinion, was harmful for me because there was a point where I couldn't do it on my own anymore. There was a point where I needed to talk about it. There was a point where I needed somebody to be that mirror and reflect for me and help me see that. hey, maybe you're too hard on yourself sometimes. Maybe you put a lot of pressure on yourself. Maybe patience in this moment is the right play. And I think a lot of the value in this for me was two major takeaways. The first was that receiving objective perspective can be extremely important. It was for me. Having a stranger who had no horse in the race, who had absolutely no reason to lie to me. And I get the argument that, okay, they're making money and they have a, you know, financial interest. But I think going in with that level of cynicism would have been harmful for me. I truly do believe that my therapist, at her core, has the right intentions and is interested and cares about me as a person. And I understand that not all therapists may be like that, and I think that's why it's important to meet and have consultations and find somebody that we can relate to and feel comfortable with. Find somebody that we feel fits us, or find somebody whose approach is helpful to us. And I think I found that. And receiving that objective perspective from this person and having a level of rapport and trust with this person to the point where when they say something, I can give them the benefit of the doubt and I can understand if they say you're being too hard on yourself. That's what I see. I can sit there and go, yeah, you know what? She's probably right. Let me examine, you know, let me examine that situation. And next time I'll try to ask myself, hey, are you being too hard on yourself here? So that was the first takeaway is how valuable objective perspective can be. How valuable having a trained professional validate, echo back, give objective perspective, how valuable that could be in shifting our own perspective. It was absolutely valuable for me. The second biggest takeaway was not to put myself in a box. And I guess this is a bigger discussion on identity and how we define ourselves. And you can get pretty philosophical here, I suppose. But I learned the importance of not putting myself in a box. There were times where I would ask, am I this? Am I X? And or I would ask for, I think I'm Y. Are there particular tests, etc.? And some of the response was, well, we can do that testing if you'd like, if you insist on it. But I'd be worried about putting yourself in a box. And I started to understand that because I think in moments, sometimes we define ourselves so deeply by one or two things, and that could be our career, or that could be, I'm a mother, I'm a father, or I'm a software engineer, or I'm a financial planner, whatever. I think we assign these labels to ourselves, and our identity in moments can get so tied to that particular thing that we start to dismiss the rest of our experience. And I think that's what the notion of putting ourselves in boxes is. At least for me, I was putting myself into these boxes, trying to find the box I belonged in. And one thing that was said that I think I'm still trying to do is practicing radical acceptance. just accepting who I am. Just just radically accepting who I am. And that doesn't mean I can't change. That doesn't mean I can't work on behaviors. That doesn't mean I can't work to better myself. But just overall, I think I've come to accept that I can be a very good person. I can be a very supportive friend. I can be a very good partner. I can be thoughtful, and there are a lot of positive qualities. Not to say I don't have any negative ones, but I think part of radical acceptance is also accepting that we have some negative qualities. That's just part of the human experience from my perspective. I don't know anybody who's perfect, and I certainly don't claim to be. So I think those were my two biggest takeaways is this notion of receiving objective perspective and this notion of not trying to put myself in a box. In moments, I think I overthink and I try so hard to understand myself. And I know other people who have this shared experience, the overthinking, the anxiety, the perfectionism, the people pleasing, and this perhaps existential crisis of identity. But what I can say is this: I don't think there's a day in time where we have everything figured out. I think what I've learned is that life throws us challenges and we decide which challenges we want to take on through our decisions. And we have the power to choose who we associate with, where our time and energy goes. And in some cases, it may seem like we don't have choice, but I feel like in a lot of cases we do. We have the power to change our situation. We have the power to improve our lives. We have the power to understand ourselves and react differently. Now, is that going to take time and effort? Absolutely. And I guess one thing I would say is I've learned to be patient about that. I've learned to understand that I can't fix everything in a day or a week. I've learned that sometimes true change takes discomfort and time and patience. And I suppose a lot of these learnings have come through the awareness, the openness in therapy, which, as we talked about in that Psychology Today article, awareness and openness are two of the keys to that psychological flexibility we talked about. So, with that being said, I guess in closing, my experience with therapy has been a very positive one. It has resulted in improving relationships. It has resulted in decreased stress. It has resulted in being more patient, being more aware, being more open, understanding myself and my feelings a little more. It has helped with being more compassionate and empathetic. And a lot of positives have come from it. So I guess if you're listening to this and you can relate to my story and you're on the fence about whether therapy can help you or not, like I obviously can't guarantee it will, but I know from my perspective, it has been absolutely paramount in helping with my mental health, helping me understand some of the things I go through, helping me improve the quality of life I live. So if anyone asked me whether I would recommend it, absolutely. Absolutely. It may be the best money you ever spend. It may be the best time you ever spend. And it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your mental health. The same way a health checkup or diagnostic testing or preventative medicine and testing is an investment in our future selves. I think some of these mental health resources work similarly. And I feel it's a shame that there's such a stigma around it in our society because if someone has a broken leg, no one bats an eye when they go to the doctor. But if someone's struggling with their mental health, I feel we should have the same attitude. If our mental health is waning and we're struggling, then I feel we should encourage each other to seek that help. We should encourage each other to reach out to these professionals and these people who are well versed in assisting and helping and treating the various illnesses, conditions, disorders. So, yeah, I guess if you're on that journey, if you are thinking about starting a journey with therapy, hopefully this shared experience, or hopefully me sharing my experience, brings some insight into the process, brings some clarity, brings some possible, perhaps it gives you knowledge of the possible benefits of therapy. I can say that my experience with therapy has been overall very positive. Were there difficult moments? Yes. Were there a lot of tears? Yes. Was there a lot of reliving moments? Yes. But overall, being able to express, understand, be validated, be shown compassion, be shown empathy was very, very positive for me. Anyways, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good day. I'd like to thank you all for listening. A small reminder that you can find all our links on linktree/blacksheepcoaching. That's linktr.ee/blacksheepcoaching. It would also mean a lot if you could support the podcast by subscribing, liking, sharing, or becoming a patron on Patreon. I hope this episode assisted you in finding direction and moving with intention. And remember that big journeys start with small steps.